Hello, welcome to another How to Code Well video tutorial. My name is Peter Fisher. Today we're going to do something slightly differently. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to install Docker Machine on a Linux Ubuntu desktop. The reason why I want to do this is because I want to set up multiple Docker machines holding various containers such as Redmine and Jenkins and Bitbucket and so forth. When I tried to do this using the documentation that I've got in front here, I had some errors, so I'm going to talk you through how to install Docker Machine to a Ubuntu system via the command line. And when I get to those errors, I'll explain what those errors mean and how to get around them. So these are the documentations. This is the documentation that you can find at docs.docker.com/machine. I'll provide a link to this in the description below. And the bit we're interested in, if I scroll down a little bit, we can see if you are using OS X or Linux. So they've given us some commands that we need to run on the terminal. I'll just explain what these commands do. So we're issuing a curl request here, curl -l, to the github.com site, and we're going to pull the Docker Machine binary. We're also going to supply some bits and pieces, some requirements based on the Linux distribution that we're using. So in this case, it's going to be Ubuntu. We're then streaming that download to user local bin. So that's the directory that you've got on the Ubuntu system, on the Linux system. We're going to put that to Docker -machine. We're also going to do something else on the next line, and if I scroll that way, we can see that we're going to chmod +x, which means that we're going to give the user local bin Docker machine that we've just downloaded executable rights. Now that's +x means that we're going to give executable rights to the current user. Okay, so as I said, when I did this, I had a couple of issues. I came across an error. So I'm just going to copy that and paste that into the terminal, which, so this is I've SSH'd into a Ubuntu box that I've got in the office. And if I was to paste that in and press enter, we can see the error here. So we're saying that user local bin Docker machine, we've got a permission denied. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means that the user local bin, the directory, obviously has different user credentials, permissions that the Peter user, the user that I've logged in as, actually has. So the user Peter, the current user that I am, does not have permission to put Docker machine into this directory, and we can test that out. I'll just do an ls -al into user local bin. So ls -l will get the user permissions of that directory. So let's not just the user permissions, I should say, also group permissions, so permissions overall of that directory. So let's hit enter, and we can see that we've got, so these are the this is the permission. This column here is the user, and that's the root. And that's the group. So we can see that this this directory has root and user and group permissions of root. So only root can access this directory, and that is why we're getting the permission denied error. So what we need to do is we need to modify the permissions for user local bin to allow this user, allow the Peter user, the user that you're logged in as, to change and alter this directory, to add things to this directory. We do this using sudo chown -r, because we want to do it recursively, and we're going to issue the whoami command. Now that's going to get the current user that you're logged in as, and we're going to tell it to do that to user local and bin. Okay, so just to recap, we're doing this as a sudo user, so this is going to request my password. We're doing a chown, which will change the ownership. We're doing it recursively. We're doing it based on the current user that I am, so that's who I am. And we are applying all of that to user local bin. So after this, these permissions will change to the current user. So let's run that. Of course, it asks for a password, so I'm going to type that in. Okay, so now if I just go up a bit, we can run that again, and we can see that we've changed the parent directory, well, the user local bin directory, to have the user of Peter. So that used to be root, so root above there. And after issuing that command, we've changed it to the current user that I am. Okay, so let's run the curl again and see what we get. So let's go up a bit, and it was this command here. And let's run that. We can see now that the curl is running. We're downloading it. I don't know how long this is going to take. It could take a bit of time. No, that's done. Okay, so let's go back to the docs and scroll down. We don't need to worry about that again because this is Windows. And this checks that the Docker machine is installed. So we need to run docker -machine version. Okay, let's clear the screen and run docker -machine. So we can see that we've got it, because if I did a tab, we can see that it's in. And we're just going to type in version, and we can see that we've downloaded Docker machine, and we've got the version here. Now again, I can just do docker machine, and let's just type in help, and we can get the help text from Docker machine. Okay, so that's a quick demonstration of how to get around the user permissions when installing Docker machine on a Linux Ubuntu desktop. I hope that's helped. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you all soon. Hello, welcome to another How to Code Well video tutorial. My name is Peter Fisher, and this video will follow on from the previous Docker tutorial where I demonstrated how to install Docker machine on a Ubuntu Linux system. This tutorial will demonstrate how to create a Docker machine on the Ubuntu system. So we have SSH'd into the Ubuntu box at the moment, and if we did a Docker machine ls, we can see that we don't actually have any machines created. So let's go and create one now. So to do that, we would do Docker machine, and we would pass in create. Now the two minimum requirements of creating a Docker machine is passing the driver and also the name of the Docker machine that we wish to create. So the driver, in this case, we're going to use VirtualBox. So that's -d virtualbox, and the name of the machine that we wish to create, I'm just going to do temp.sysadmin.local. Okay, so let's press enter now, and that should create the the Docker machine. So it's doing a bunch of pre-checks, and it's returned an error saying that the VBox Manage application cannot be found to ensure that VirtualBox is installed and the VBox Manage is on the current user's path. Well, let's go and just double check if it is. So let's do where is VirtualBox. So we can see that VirtualBox isn't on the system. There's no knowledge of where VirtualBox is. So we need to install VirtualBox. So to do that, we would do sudo apt get install VirtualBox. Okay, so it's saying that the following additional package will also be installed, which is VirtualBox-qt. That's fine. It suggested some of the packages to install. We don't necessarily need them right now. It's going to be 89.3 megabytes big, so it's going to be quite a large installation. So what I'll do is I'll skip the video forward and speak to you all again once it's been installed. So let's run that now. Okay, we can see that VirtualBox Qt has been set up and the VirtualBox itself has been installed. So what I'll do is just clear the screen down, and I'll run whereas again just to ensure that we do have knowledge of VirtualBox on the system. So we can see that it's installed to user bin VirtualBox, and these are the other instances or the other locations that we're aware of for VirtualBox. So now we should be able to, if I did moved up a bit, we should be able to continue and create the Docker machine. So Docker machine create -d is the driver flag. We're using VirtualBox, which we've just installed. The name that we're going to use for the Docker machine is temp.sysadmin.local. So let's press enter. It's doing the checks again, and we are copying the boot to Docker ISO from the cache that we've previously used before. It's creating the VirtualBox VM and setting up the SSH keys. It's now checking the network to recreate if needed and waiting for the IP. Sometimes waiting for the IP can take a bit of time. Hopefully it won't take too long for this video. Okay, so we've got the IP, we're waiting for the machine to be up and running, waiting for the SSH to be available, which it is, provisioning it with boot to Docker, and then yes, the client has been created, the Docker machine has been created. So in order to get the environment variables of Docker machine, we need to run Docker machine env temp.sysadmin.local. So let's do that. Let's clear the screen and do Docker machine env and then the name of the machine that we've just created, so sysadmin.local. And we can see here that we've got a bunch of environment variables that have been that will be set if we run this here. So we're going to evaluate the environment variables of this Docker machine. So let's copy that in and paste. So that's now set. So I should be able to therefore do echo and then one of these variables. So let's copy the host, for example. So echo $docker host should echo out the host for the Docker machine, which it is. Another thing we can do is just go back to Docker machine ls to list out the machines that we have. So we can see that the machine has been created, it's active, that's what the star here means, the asterisk means here. The driver is VirtualBox, that's the driver that we installed it with. The state is currently running, that's the IP, the URL that it's sent to. This is the version of Docker that we're using, and if this terminal was slightly bigger, you could also see the errors on this line, and there isn't any errors at the moment. Okay, so that's a quick demonstration then of how to install, or how to create, I should say, Docker machines using Ubuntu Linux. Thanks again. Hello, welcome to another How to Code Well video tutorial. My name's Peter Fisher, and today we're going to take a look at how to change or switch between Docker machines and how I alias commands to make things a little bit smoother and quicker in my daily development. So we're in a Ubuntu bash shell here, and if I was to type Docker machine ls, we can see that we've got two Docker machines, temp1 and temp2.sysadmin.local. The first one here, the temp1 is active because you can see by the asterisk, like so. Now, the way you normally switch between Docker machines is you usually find out the environment variables and then evaluate those to the current shell, so to the current bash shell that I'm in. And I'll just demonstrate how you would normally do that. So let's just do Docker Docker machine, and then you would do env for environment, and you would have to type in the machine name that you want to get the environment variables for. So sysadmin.local, and then hit enter, and we can see the environment variables that are listed, so the host and the name and the path and so forth. This command that they've given you at the bottom is the command that you copy and paste into the shell to evaluate these environment variables, to commit these to the current shell. So if I was to run that and press enter, then I've now switched to that Docker machine. If I was to, because I've done it on temp1, it would still be there, but if I was to change that back to temp2, for example, and then do an ls, we can see that we've actually switched, because we've committed the exports. We've changed these variables to be this this Docker machine, the second one here, because we can see that that's been set to active. Now that's quite a lot of typing. You might have several of these machines, and it can become quite messy to have to type in this this piece of text here just to switch. So what I usually do is create some aliases in my bash RC, and I'll just demonstrate what I mean by that. So let's just clear the screen and do sudo nano, or you could use whatever you want, so Vim or whatever, even a text editor, and type in what is it, bash RC. There you go. Okay, now scroll right to the bottom, and what we need to do is set some aliases up. So what an alias is basically a command that you type, just a word that you type that represents a command that can be executed. So alias, and then it's the alias name. So we're going to do docker machine temp1, and then we're going to equal that to a string. Now within this string is the command that we wish to execute. The idea is that when we type in docker machine temp1, whatever in this string gets executed. So what we can do here is do eval, and then $, and then in here we do docker machine env temp1 dot sysadmin dot local. Now notice this is the same command that was offered when we did the docker machine env, and we're just evaluating. This is the command that was given to us in that section just previously. So what I can do is save the file. I'm just double checking that all makes sense. Yep, so I can save the file, click yes, write to the file, and then what we need to do is commit that bash rc file. So bash rc, like so. So what we've done is we've now committed that alias. So if we did docker machine temp and then 1, for example, and then did a docker machine ls, we can see that we've switched, just by typing in docker machine temp1, we've now switched to this this docker machine here. Okay, this one now is active. So in the same vein, if we did if we change the bash rc file again and scroll to the bottom, changed or copied, I should say, this this line, and then put it at the bottom, change temp1 to be temp2 in that case, and in the commands case, like so, close the file, save it, commit it again. We can now do docker machine, and I'm only going to do ma tab, then hyphen dash and tab again, temp. And if I was to press tab once more, I would get these options here. So temp1 and temp2. So I'm going to go for temp2 this time, and then press enter. And then if I did Docker machine ls, we can see now that we've switched to the second machine. So again, if I was to change that to be 1 and then did an ls, we're now on the first machine. The first machine is now active. So that's a quick explanation of aliases in Linux. It's also an explanation of how to switch between Docker machines in the command line. I hope that's helped. Thanks. Hello, welcome to another How to Code Well YouTube tutorial. My name's Peter Fisher, and today I'm going to wrap up the Docker machine tutorials by demonstrating the basic commands, the other basic commands that I didn't get round to demonstrating in the previous tutorials. So previously I showed you how to create a machine, list machines, switch between machines, and so forth. So in this tutorial I'm going to show some other commands, such as changing the state of the machine and so forth. So let's just dive in. Let's just do docker machine ls, and we can see that there's one machine running temp2.sysadmin.local. It's not active, and as I mentioned before in the previous tutorials, active means that this machine doesn't have its environment variable set to this bash shell. But it is running, so please don't confuse those two. So it is running, which means that if there was something running at this IP address, then it would actually still be running. Okay, it just means that you can't run docker ps-a because there isn't actually a Docker machine that is active. But I'll get on to the actual other Docker commands in future episodes. So let's just go back to this one. Okay, so let's stop this Docker machine, because we can see that it's running, its state is running. So to stop it, we would do docker machine stop, and we would pass in the name of the machine, which is temp2.sysadmin. And I'm missing an S there on sysadmin .local. So what that's going to do is it's going to stop the machine. So if I run that now, you can see that it's stopping temp2.sysadmin.local. And you can see it stopped. So machine temp2.sysadmin.local was stopped. So if I was to run ls again to list out the machines, we can see that its state has stopped, and it no longer has the URL, and the Docker version is unknown because it has stopped. So let's just clear that screen. Likewise, with stopping a machine, we can also start a machine. So I'm just going to go back here and then type in, replace stop with start. And this takes a little bit longer because it's having to regenerate the IP address and so forth, and the SSH clients and all of that governs. So it's checking for the network and it's recreating the IPs at the moment. The next one is going to do some bits and pieces with the SSH certificates. So as I said, this does sometimes take a bit of time to do, but hopefully it'll come back shortly. Okay, here we go. So we can see that the machine was started. It then waited for the SSH to be available. It then detected the provisioner, and then it started the machine. Now notice this warning here: the machines may have a new IP address, and so you may wish to run the Docker machine env. Now this env command is the command that I showed in the previous Docker machine tutorial, and that gets the environment variables for the current Docker machine. So then you can evaluate those to the shell, and therefore that becomes active. So let's just do docker machine ls, so we can see that it's running again and it has this new URL. Okay, so we've stopped it, we've started it, but of course what we can also restart it as well. So whoops, docker machine, and then we're going to type in restart, and the name of the machine, so temp2.sysadmin.local. And what this is going to do is it's going to restart that machine, and like the starting of a machine, it will take a little bit of time, because again it has to check for the network and recreate if it needs to, potentially give it a different IP address, so you will also get that warning again. So now sometimes when I do this, it depends on the order in which the machines are in. Sometimes I have to recreate the certificates, and I'll show you the command to do that in a minute. So now we've got the Docker has restarted, and again we've got the warning about the IP address. But because there's only one Docker machine here, I'm pretty sure if I was to, let's just clear that to remove all of that. If I was to do Docker machine ls again, the IP usually starts at or ends with .100. So if there was, say, 2 machines and I was to swap remove the first one and then and start it again and so forth, and sometimes these IP addresses will switch. The more machines you've got, the more chance of that to happen. There are some scripts that you can get from GitHub that allow you to run these with static IPs and so forth, but that's probably for another tutorial. So we've done starting, and we've done stopping, and we've done restarting, but you might want to discover what the status is of the machine, of only that one particular machine. So for example, you could have a whole table of machines here, and you might only be interested in the one machine, the state of the one machine. So to do that, you would run docker, if I could spell it right, docker, there we go, docker machine, and we would run status, and again the name of that machine, so temp 2.sysadmin.local, and we could see that it's running. Now if I was to stop that machine, that would change to stopped. So for example, if I did if I was to stop it, and that stops the machine, and then I did the status of the machine, we should see that it stopped. I don't know why that took a little bit of time to do, but we should see that it stopped. Okay, so the other commands that I can show you will actually require these Docker machines to be running. So let's just clear that out again and start the machine. And whilst that's starting, I'm just going to open up another tab and then do Docker machine, because what I would like to do is run the find out the help command, and then discuss a little bit about these the commands that you can do, because there's quite a few. So these commands, this one here, active. So if you did Docker machine and then typed in active and then typed in the name of the machine, it will print the machine that is currently active. Same with config. The create one is one of the first ones I showed in a previous tutorial, and that's how you actually create the machine. You also specify the driver and the config that you want to create it with, and so forth. env again is the command that prints out the environment variables, and inspect, which is one I'll show you in a minute, as well as IP. These will actually return the configuration and information about the machine and so forth. IP will return the IP address. Kill, you can actually kill the machine. List is the one I've been using quite frequently, which lists all the machines and so forth. We can re-provision existing machines and regenerate the certificates. So these are the SSH certificates, TLS certificates for a machine and so forth. We can restart machine, which is what I've just showed you, and we can remove one. Other commands such as scp and ssh are ones that I can show you in future tutorials. SCP is great because you can copy files between machines and so forth, pretty much like you would in just using the standard secure copy and paste protocol. And then we can upgrade machines, stop machines, get the status, and start the machines as normal, and find the URL and the versions, and this is the help. So hopefully if I was to close this terminal down and go back to the original, we can see that it's now started. So let's do docker machine ls just to ensure that, yep. So that's started. So one of the ones that I want to, another command that I would like to show you is, let's just clear that screen to make some room. So let's do docker machine, and let's say we want to find the IP address of that particular machine. So it's temp2.sysadmin.local. And again, much like the status command, this is very handy if you've got several machines and you only want to find the IP of a particular machine. So we can see that that IP address is this one here, 92.168.99.100. Another command that I will show is the inspect command, because that's pretty handy. So let's do docker machine inspect, and then the machine name, so temp2.sysadmin.local. Okay, so what we've got here, what that's returned is a JSON formatted output of the configuration, the information of the machine. So we can see that we have the version of the configuration. We've got the driver information as well, so the IP address, the machine name, the SSH user, and the port. We can also find from here the memory usage, and the CPU and the disk size and so forth. And then we can find the driver name. So for this one, for example, we're using VirtualBox. And then we can find out some host options and the engine options as well, for things like IPv6 and other bits and pieces. Swarm options. Now Swarm is quite an interesting thing with Docker, because it helps to create networks, or works with networks and so forth. It's a little bit above and beyond this tutorial, but I can definitely show you that in the future. And then we've got some authentication options, so the options used for authenticating to the machine, and then of course finally the machine name that we've created. Okay, so that's a wrap up really of the Docker machine commands. So in the next couple of weeks I will be producing some more Docker tutorials that are slightly more complicated. So we're starting to move into things like Docker images and Docker containers, and what you can do with the wonderful world of Docker. But that's for now. That's all for now. If you've got any comments, questions, then please leave them in the comments below. Please subscribe to get the next couple of tutorials. I try and produce at least one a week. And like the video and share it along if you found it useful. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon. Cheers. Goodbye.